Okay, let's take a look at some of the recent actions coming out of the executive branch today.
Right.
We've got a whole stack of presidential orders, memoranda, and we want to try and understand, what they're actually trying to achieve.
And what the real-world impact might be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beyond just the official language.
Yeah, exactly. What does it mean for, regular people?
Well, it's quite a mix, covering everything from education and jobs to national security, even how we remember history or look at election funding.
Okay, so one big theme seems to be jobs, the future of work. There are a couple of orders on that.
Yeah.
Let's start with the one on advancing artificial intelligence education for American youth. What's the core idea there?
Well, the main goal is boosting AI literacy, among kids and trying to build up a workforce that's ready for an AI-driven economy.
So like getting AI into schools.
Yeah, integrating AI concepts, training teachers,
Yeah.
basically giving students earlier exposure. It could certainly help equip some students with valuable skills.
Oh, there's always a but, isn't there?
Well, yeah. The question is always implementation, right? How effectively can schools integrate this, especially with packed curriculums already? And does it maybe shift focus from other important areas?
Makes sense. It mentions establishing a White House task force on AI education. What's that about?
Right. This task force, it's led by the head of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP, and includes a bunch of cabinet secretaries, other high-level folks.
So coordination.
Pretty much coordinating the federal effort on AI education. There's also a Presidential Artificial Intelligence Challenge mentioned to, encourage student and educator achievements.
Okay. And I saw something about public-private partnerships for online resources.
Yes, that's a big emphasis. Partnering with tech companies, universities, nonprofits to develop online AI resources for K-12.
And they want these quickly.
Seems so. The goal is 180 days after the first partnerships are announced, which, could mean fast development.
But could also raise questions about, corporate influence on curriculum.
Exactly. And accessibility, too. Will all schools, especially under-resourced ones, get equal access to these tools? That's a perennial issue.
And teacher training, that must be key.
Definitely. The Secretary of Education has 90 days to issue guidance on using existing grant money for AI stuff, instructional resources, tutoring, career pathways, and importantly, teacher training.
So training teachers on AI, but also maybe using AI for training.
Both, apparently. Prioritizing AI and teacher training grant programs is mentioned, maybe to help with admin tasks, improve evaluation, but also to help teachers understand AI fundamentals themselves so they can integrate it.
Interesting. What about apprenticeships? I saw that mentioned for AI, too.
The Secretary of Labor is directed to boost participation in AI-related registered apprenticeships, setting goals, using contracts to support them, working with industry on standards.
So creating paths into tech that aren't just a 4-year degree.
That seems to be the idea, potentially opening doors for a wider range of people.
And it encourages states to use existing workforce funds like WIOA.
Yeah, using Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds for youth AI skills and work-based learning, and also pushing to make AI a priority in existing federal fellowships and scholarships, trying to align different funding streams.
Okay, so that's the AI education piece. There's another order focused on jobs, preparing Americans for high-paying, skilled trade jobs of the future. This sounds broader.
It is, yeah. While the AI one is specific, this aims more broadly at connecting workforce development with reindustrialization needs and strengthening registered apprenticeships across different skilled trades, not just tech.
So potentially impacting sectors like manufacturing, construction.
Exactly. Could have a more immediate effect there.
What are the key actions in this order?
Okay, within 90 days, Labor, Commerce, and Education secretaries need to come up with a comprehensive worker investment and development strategy report.
A big report. What's it supposed to cover?
Looking at integrating systems better, identifying ineffective programs to maybe reform or cut, promoting innovation, upskilling current workers, including how AI affects their jobs. Also looking at alternative credentials, not just degrees, and streamlining data collection on how well programs work.
So, a strategic review could be useful, depending on what they recommend and if it actually gets done.
Always the caveat, yes.
This one also has an apprenticeship goal, doesn't it?
It does, a very ambitious one. Reach and surpass 1 million new active apprentices within 120 days.
Wow, that's a lot. How?
Expanding into new industries, scaling up models that work, better linking apprenticeships with career and technical education. If they hit that goal, it would be a significant expansion.
And both these job orders seem to emphasize tracking outcomes, like earnings.
Yes. The second one specifically highlights improving transparency on performance, how much people earn after a program, employment rates, making sure the money is being used effectively.
All right, let's switch gears a bit. Higher education. There's an order on reforming accreditation to strengthen higher education. Accreditation. That's kind of the gatekeeper for federal student aid, right?
Exactly. It's a crucial, if often overlooked, process. This order voices concern that accreditors aren't doing enough to ensure quality,
Meaning?
meaning they might be approving schools, programs that have low graduation rates or leave students with poor job prospects and lots of debt. That's the argument being made.
Okay. But the order also gets into DEI standards, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What's the issue there?
This is a major point. The order raises concerns that some accreditors are pushing DEI standards in ways the administration believes could mandate unlawful discrimination.
Like based on race, following recent court rulings.
That seems to be the implication, yes. It cites the American Bar Association and medical education as examples. The view expressed is that these standards might force institutions into considering race in ways that aren't legally allowed anymore.
So the practical effect could be less focus on diversity and accreditation.
Potentially, yes. That's certainly a possible outcome, which critics would argue could harm efforts to create more inclusive environments.
And the response is accountability for accreditors.
That's the policy stated here. Holding accreditors accountable if their actions are deemed unlawful, including investigating them, potentially even terminating their federal recognition.
Which would be a huge deal for the schools they accredit.
Absolutely. It could lead to big changes in how accreditors operate.
The order talks about new principles of student-oriented accreditation. What are those?
They're meant to refocus accreditation on, well, what the order defines as high-quality education. Things like requiring programs to be high quality and free from unlawful discrimination, reducing barriers to innovation, prioritizing intellectual diversity, making sure accreditors don't force schools to violate state laws, and preventing, sort of, credential inflation. It's a specific vision for higher ed.
And how are these principles supposed to be put into practice?
Several steps. The Secretary of Education is directed to resume recognizing new accreditors, maybe to spur competition. Mandate data-driven improvement, but without reference to race or sex. Share civil rights non-compliance findings with accreditors. Launch an experimental site for new quality checks. Streamline the recognition process itself. Make it easier for schools to switch accreditors. And update the official accreditation handbook.
That's a lot of changes to the system.
It really could reshape the landscape, yeah.
Okay, sticking with education, but K-12 this time. Reinstating common sense school discipline policies. The title itself tells you something. What's the goal?
The stated aim is to end discipline policies based on what the order calls discriminatory and unlawful equity ideology.
And that targets specific past guidance.
Yes, specifically the 2014 Dear Colleague letter on school discipline from the Obama administration. The claim in this order is that the 2014 guidance pressured schools to ignore misconduct sometimes just to avoid racial disparities in discipline data.
Which, the order argues, hurt school safety.
That's the argument. So this order rescinds that 2014 letter. It also references more recent 2023 guidance that raised similar concerns. The core policy now is ensuring schools don't engage in racial discrimination under Title VI, but seemingly without that focus on disparate discipline rates.
So potentially a shift back to more traditional discipline approaches, focusing on individual conduct.
That seems to be the direction, yes. Less emphasis on analyzing overall racial statistics and discipline.
Are there specific actions required quickly?
There are. Within 30 days, the Secretary of Education needs to issue new guidance on discipline and Title VI. Within 60 days, coordination with governors and state AGs. 90 days for a revised discipline code for military-connected schools. And 120 days for a report on this discriminatory equity ideology-based discipline, including looking at Title VI investigations and the role of nonprofits.
So moving fast on this one.
Seems like a clear priority.
This feels related to another order, restoring equality of opportunity and meritocracy. Again, very strong language. What's the core argument here?
The principle outlined is equality of opportunity, explicitly not equality of outcomes. Emphasis on treating people as individuals based on merit, qualifications, promoting meritocracy.
Okay, and it specifically goes after something called disparate-impact liability. Can you explain that?
Sure. So, disparate impact, in simple terms, is a legal concept where a policy or practice can be seen as discriminatory if it harms a particular group disproportionately, even if there was no intent to discriminate.
Right, like a test that unintentionally screens out more people from one group.
Exactly. This order argues that relying on disparate impact forces employers and others to consider race, to sort of engage in racial balancing, just to avoid lawsuits.
And the claim is that hinders merit-based hiring.
That's the claim, that it undermines civil rights laws by focusing on group outcomes instead of individual merit and opportunity. Limiting or getting rid of disparate impact could make it harder to challenge policies that have discriminatory effects but lack discriminatory intent.
So the goal is to eliminate its use.
To the maximum degree possible within the executive branch, yes. It revokes prior approvals for Justice Department Title VI regulations related to disparate impact. It tells agencies to deprioritize enforcing laws that use it.
That's a significant shift in civil rights enforcement.
Potentially huge, yes.
What specific actions are mandated?
The Attorney General has to start the process to repeal or change Title VI regulations to remove disparate impact considerations, report on all other regulations using it, review ongoing investigations and consent decrees that rely on it.
And looking ahead.
Agencies need to figure out if federal law preempts state laws that use disparate impact and issue guidance to employers on how to promote equal access without focusing so much on, say, college degrees as a requirement.
Okay. Wow. Let's shift to something maybe less high profile but still important. Strengthening probationary periods in the federal service. What's the issue here?
The stated goal is a high-quality, efficient federal workforce. The concern expressed is that the initial probationary periods for new federal hires aren't being used effectively, meaning agencies aren't doing enough to weed out underperformers during that initial trial period, which the order suggests leads to lower efficiency.
So what's changing?
A new civil service rule, Rule 11, is being introduced. It requires agencies to affirmatively determine that keeping a new hire is actually beneficial to the government before their appointment becomes final.
So it's not automatic passage anymore? They have to actively sign off.
That's the idea. The burden shifts. Agencies have to justify keeping the employee, and this new rule replaces some older ones.
What are the specifics of this Rule 11?
It sets the scope, duration of probation, usually a year, how prior service counts. Importantly, the completion process requires agency certification near the end, and it states the employee bears the burden of showing their continued employment is in the public interest.
And appeals.
It notes that OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, can set up appeal procedures for terminations during probation, suggests a more rigorous evaluation.
And more formal review process during probation.
Seems so. Agency heads need to identify these employees, assign evaluators, hold meetings to discuss performance at least 60 days before the period ends, and then make that final certification decision within 30 days at the end. Could definitely lead to more scrutiny for new hires.
Okay. Next up. Transparency regarding foreign influence at American universities. This has been in the news more lately.
It has. This order focuses on enforcing Section 117 of the Higher Education Act. That's the part requiring universities to disclose significant foreign funding.
And the concern is they haven't been doing that well.
Exactly. Concerns about underreporting, hidden sources of money, basically a lack of transparency about the extent of foreign influence on campuses.
And the policy is more sunlight.
Essentially, yes. End secrecy, protect against foreign propaganda, safeguard students, and research from exploitation. It reflects a growing worry, particularly about influence from certain countries.
What steps are being taken?
The Secretary of Education is directed to reverse policies that might have allowed secrecy, require more detail and disclosures who gave the money, why make the info more public, and hold schools accountable if they don't comply.
How? Audits, investigations.
All of the above, potentially leading to enforcement by the Attorney General. Plus, universities might have to certify compliance before getting federal grants in the future. That could be a powerful lever.
Okay, shifting to resources. Unleashing America's offshore critical minerals and resources. Sounds like a big push.
It does. It frames this in terms of national security and economic interests needing critical minerals for tech, energy, defense, and wanting to reduce reliance on foreign suppliers, especially potential rivals.
So looking at the seabed for these minerals.
Yes. The policy is to really advance U.S. leadership in seabed mining, speeding up domestic capabilities for everything from exploring to processing, streamlining permits, investing in science.
And coordinating across agencies.
Better coordination, yeah. Establishing the U.S. as a leader in responsible practices is also mentioned. Building a domestic supply chain. and working with partners internationally, partly to counter China's influence in this area.
Are there quick deadlines here, too?
Yes, several actions within 60 days. Commerce Secretary to expedite exploration licenses and commercial permits outside U.S. waters and report on private sector interest. Interior Secretary to speed up permitting within U.S. waters and identify critical minerals there.
Joint reports, too.
On international benefit sharing, on using the national defense stockpile for processing, and a broader report on tools to support seabed mining, both domestic and international. A real sense of urgency.
Okay, let's look at the White House initiative to promote excellence and innovation at historically Black colleges and universities. This seems like continued support.
That's the stated purpose, yes. Elevating HBCUs, supporting them in advancing potential, providing quality education, ensuring access to federal programs, empowering grads, enhancing competitiveness.
And this creates a new initiative inside the White House.
Correct. Within the Executive Office of the President, led by an executive director, the missions include getting more private sector help for HBCUs planning, infrastructure, professional development, and boosting HBCU capabilities overall.
Placing it in the White House signals importance, I guess.
Usually does, yes.
What are some specific things this initiative will work on?
Implementing the HBCU Partners Act, advancing administration priorities for HBCUs, fostering research centers, improving info sharing, addressing student success, building student pipelines, encouraging state matching funds, improving access to federal money, enhancing research competitiveness, convening an annual summit. It's a broad mandate.
But it also revokes a previous HBCU order.
It does. Executive Order 14041 from 2021 is revoked, and an advisory council established under that order is terminated.
Any reason given?
Not explicitly in this order. It suggests maybe a change in strategy, perhaps preferring this more centralized White House initiative approach over the previous advisory council structure.
Okay. Lastly, we have a set of proclamations. These are often more symbolic, right?
Generally, yes, but they state official positions and call for observances. There's one for the Days of Remembrance of Victims of the Holocaust, 2025.
Honoring the victims.
Yes. Honoring the 6 million Jews murdered and other victims of Nazi persecution. Roma and Sinti, Slavic peoples, disabled persons, and others. Acknowledging survivors, committing to preserve their stories.
And it mentions the 80th anniversary of Auschwitz liberation.
It does, and reiterates the commitment to combating anti-Semitism, referencing a prior EO. It calls for observance from April 20th to 27th, 2025. Standard but important annual remembrance.
Then one honoring the memory of His Holiness Pope Francis.
Right. This orders flags flown at half-staff until sunset on the day of interment, a standard mark of respect for a major world figure. Specifies all federal buildings, military posts, embassies, etc.
We also have National Park Week 2025.
Celebrating national parks, their beauty and history. Mentions the upcoming 250th anniversary of Lexington and Concord, references some past park-related actions, encourages people to visit and learn during the week of April 19th to 27th, 2025.
And National Volunteer Week 2025.
Expressing gratitude to volunteers, highlighting the role of volunteerism in American life, recognizes their service and calls for Americans to volunteer during the week of April 20th to 26th, 2025, promotes civic engagement.
Finally, World Intellectual Property Day 2025.
This renews commitment to protecting American innovation, citing the Constitution. Mentions administration efforts in areas like AI, protecting IP through trade policy, combating theft. Encourages celebrating creators and inventors on April 26th, 2025. Underscores economic importance.
Okay, one last item, not an order or proclamation, but a presidential memorandum. Investigation into unlawful straw donor and foreign contributions in American elections. Sounds serious.
It does. This directs the Attorney General to investigate illegal straw donors, people donating someone else's money, and illegal contributions from foreign nationals. Cites the federal laws against these.
What prompted this specifically?
The memo mentions press reports and congressional investigations raising concerns about online fundraising platforms.
How might they be misused?
Concerns about breaking down large donations. Using fake accounts may be funded with gift cards for straw donations, and foreign nationals finding ways to donate illegally online. It specifically points to a House investigation finding significant fraud campaigns with foreign links on Act Blue.
Those are significant allegations about election integrity.
Very much so. Undermining campaign finance laws.
And the directive is for the AG to investigate.
Yes, the Attorney General, working with the Treasury Secretary, is told to investigate these claims and take enforcement action if laws were broken, and report back within 180 days.
So an active investigation mandated.
Exactly. Shows a focus on pursuing potential illegal campaign finance activity.
Well, looking back at all of these,
Yeah.
it really is a wide snapshot of priorities, isn't it?
Absolutely. You see these big pushes on the future workforce, AI, skilled trades, major potential shifts in higher ed accreditation, with that focus on quality and the controversy around DEI.
Right, and the changes in school discipline moving away from that equity focus.
And that related very strong emphasis on meritocracy and rejecting disparate impact. The potential ripple effects of that could be huge, affecting everything from hiring to civil rights enforcement.
Definitely. Then there's the increased scrutiny on foreign money in universities, the push for domestic critical minerals offshore.
Reflecting security and economic concerns. Continued support for HBCUs, though maybe through a different structure now.
And alongside those substantive policy changes, you have the symbolic gestures, the proclamations for Remembrance, parks, volunteers, IP Day, plus that directive on election finance investigations.
It's a real mix. Some actions aim for immediate, tangible changes, others set longer-term policy directions, and some are about reinforcing values or investigating potential problems.
It really highlights how much the executive branch can shape policy across so many areas. The crucial thing now will be watching how these are actually implemented, what the real-world effects turn out to be, and how they interact with Congress and the courts down the line.
Exactly. Implementation is everything, and the long-term consequences often take time to become clear.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it, how we best balance this kind of executive action with the roles of the other branches when tackling these big national issues. Something to keep thinking about.